Hello everyone, what's up? Prince of Dean here with another review of Ahsoka. So today we are going to be taking a look at a single episode instead of two episodes back to back today, because this episode's probably big enough to definitely warrant a solo discussion. That will be episode 5, Shadow Warrior. So this is the one that a lot of people have been waiting for, and I will say it did not disappoint. We have Force Ghost Anakin Skywalker in the world between worlds, showing us different Force visions that allow us some flashbacks to the Clone Wars, but this time in live action instead of animation. And yeah, it's cool. I'm not really over the moon, blown away, jumping up and down, going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this!" It's like, yeah, okay, it's Clone Wars in live action. It's cool to see. It's more or less the writing that is my major concern here. The writing's good, so it's like, but right out of the gate, I guess I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way. Yeah, I just don't really understand and I guess I've always been this way. I don't really understand the big whoop whoop celebration. Hey, this is really awesome and cool. I can't believe they're doing this reactions to really any character being brought over from animation to live action. Now, I've talked about in the past, it's like, hey, Bo-Katan's cool. It's cool that she's showing up and she's played by her voice actress, Katie Sackhoff, whose name I can remember right now, thankfully. Cad Bane showing up in Book of Boba Fett. That's a really cool thing for them to do, especially for Corey Burton to be the character and etc. Seeing some of these animation in terms of just the process of how it's performed, seeing characters like Ahsoka and Hera and Ezra and Thrawn, and seeing all of them being brought over into live action, it is interesting and kind of neat to see. However, I don't necessarily understand. Well, I think I understand it. I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with people. That sounds weird. I don't agree with people's reactions. Let me put it this way. The reason I'm not reacting the same as some of these other people is because this is just kind of my hypothesis on the matter. And that is that I value and appreciate animation just as much, if not more, than live action. That sounds a little that sounds a little holier than thou. It's like, well, I actually appreciate animation, unlike you heathens. It sounds a little bit like that. I don't want it to come off that way, because I know for a fact that some of these people that are freaking out because they're big fans of the Clone Wars and they think it's really cool to see these characters brought forward to live action, and I agree, it is cool. I just don't have the, oh my gosh, I'm having this emotional moment, I'm crying over seeing Captain Rex in live action for all of 3.5 seconds. It's like, yeah, that is really cool, even though they got his arm guards backwards on the costume. It's pretty obvious when you notice. It's like, oh yeah, his arm guards are flip-flopped. Oops. They're facing the wrong way. Oopsie. But so yeah, stuff like that is cool, but for me, Star Wars, it doesn't matter what medium it is, whether it is movies, TV, animated TV, I'll even make its own little subcategory there. Video games, comic books, novels. It doesn't really matter what medium Star Wars comes in. It's all Star Wars to me. And I treat it all about equal on the same level, unless something's bad. Then I go, I'll just ignore that over there. Like that Heir to the Jedi book that came out in like 2014 or something like that. Like, that book was not great. I was like, okay, I'll just pitch that in. I don't really care about this section of my brain. But it's like, yeah, no, it's still Star Wars, and that its story's whole, and the story in a novel or a comic or a video game holds just as much weight for me as in one of the movies or the TV shows. So them doing Ahsoka in live action and having these flashbacks, it just makes sense for them to bring some of these characters forward from animation to live action like this. even if it is in a, just a Force Vision, very brief little kind of almost even a cameo thing like that. Because it makes sense for the story. So I'm not really freaking out about it because I kind of it's like, yeah, this makes sense. It's kind of and that is one of the issues I kind of have with it's like not it's I'm going to say quote unquote issues with the last two-ish years of Disney Plus Star Wars content, with the exception of I'm going to say Andor, and is that I feel like Mando season 3. Now Mando's, I mean, I've reviewed every episode, so you can see where I thought things were going. It's like Mando season 3 definitely went in different directions than people were expecting. But then there's still a lot of, it's like there's still several instances of in that and Obi-Wan and even here in Ahsoka where it's like, yeah, this made sense and everyone saw this coming from a mile away. So there's not really necessarily any surprises here. And maybe that's just me for being so tuned into Star Wars to where it's like, if you call me a casual fan of Star Wars, I mean, it's I'm going to laugh in your face just like that. It's like, I am not a casual fan of Star Wars. It's like, I am one step removed from people that will spend 3 months savings to get on to get a plane ticket to go to Celebration Japan. I am just one step below those people. That's how big a fan of Star Wars I am. And I think that's only just because I'm somewhat smart with my money. Not to say that those people that will get a plane ticket to go to Japan for the next Star Wars Celebration are wrong for doing that, of course. Because let me tell you, I wish I could go to Celebration. It'd be really nice if the next one is like in I don't know, Chicago or something, somewhere that is generally close to me, because it's always Anaheim or Orlando or London or Japan. It's like it's just kind of far away from me. So it'd be nice if they could have one in Chicago for once or something. Well, I think they did do Chicago a couple years ago, but that was a couple years ago when I was in high school or something, or like freshman year of college, and I couldn't go. But it's like, okay, if maybe if in 2026 we could have it in Chicago again, where I could ask off work and I would definitely have the money to go do that, that'd be great. Thanks, Lucasfilm. But so back to the main point, tangent aside there. Maybe I'm just so tuned into Star Wars that, yeah, it's going to be really hard to surprise me and, other fans of, let's say, my caliber, quote unquote. So, which again sounds wrong, because it's that's when you start it almost feels like there's a caste system, like you're ranking. It's like, oh, you're not a real fan because X and Y. And I've gone on about real fans before. It's how I hate that. It's like, even if you're just a casual observer of Star Wars, you're a fan. And yeah, there's different levels, but that doesn't necessarily make one type of fan better than the other. But me being so in tune to it, so maybe that's why I just don't find much of this surprising. And I've spent years and years and years, happily, digesting the Dave Filoni style of storytelling. And so you introduce Ahsoka into the world between worlds here after the end of the last episode, and you have, Force Ghost Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker. There it's like, well, yep, no, it's pretty obvious we're going to see, some live action Clone Wars stuff. And it's like, so yeah, it was really cool to see the lesson that went with it of really reinforcing. It's like, hey, the way I kind of taught you back in the day was kind of wrong. We should be keepers of the peace, and violence shouldn't be our immediate reaction. Like it is a lot, kind of also reinforcing a lot of what Baylan Skoll was saying in the last episode. She was Ahsoka was the first one to draw her weapon, and Baylan was like, okay, well, all right, if we have to, and then he whooped her. And it's like it's like he threw her off a cliff without much effort. So because he was a little more centered and with it, even though he's supposedly on the dark side. So it's like it's like, okay, I really hope we get back to Baylan Skoll next episode, because I'm curious to see where they're going with him. There's definitely more to him than meets the eye, but I've talked about that before. So yeah, it's like, it was cool to see the live action Clone Wars stuff. I think Hayden was awesome in this episode. There was really a good, because before seeing him in and Obi-Wan and now here in Ahsoka. I guess he's only going to show up in Star Wars shows named after a person. That's kind of funny when I think about it now. But seeing him in these shows and being able to show Anakin in a little bit of a different light compared to where we saw him in the prequels, where live action Anakin and Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, that was at his most tortured and not sure of what to do and tempted. And this was not Anakin Skywalker on a random Tuesday. This was Anakin Skywalker after his mother has just died, when he's afraid for the life of his wife and children, not that he was aware of that at the time. So it's like, very, very, very much, we see some of the most conflicted we ever see Anakin Skywalker in those movies. And that's a big ask. And it's like, depending on it's like, some of the dialogue isn't great. It's, of course, everyone points to the sand line. And it's kind of unfortunate because I really, really understand what it took me a while, but then a couple years ago, I finally clicked. Like, that line's not everyone. It was when everyone started memeing it to death that I really took a good look at it. I'm like, that line is, it's bad, but it's not really actually that bad. It's not like it's some random piece of dialogue he randomly threw out there. There is a really deep meaning behind that line of dialogue. It was just unfortunately delivered very wooden, and the conversation around it was not structured well to really convey that message. And of course, he's just being creepy, running his arm or his hand up and down Padme's back. It's like they could have really gotten the point of the point of that line of dialogue across better if that's a what if, again, going on a tangent there. That's just what I do with Star Wars. I go on tangents. So anyway, point being that the Hayden's performance as Anakin is what it is in the prequels. I think he's really, really good in Revenge of the Sith, not so much in Attack of the Clones. And so his performance can be polarizing for some people. But so when we move into the Clone Wars animated series and you have Matt Lanter taking over the role for the voice, I mean, it breathed this whole new life into Anakin. We were seeing Anakin Skywalker more this is Anakin on a Tuesday, where it's like, those conflicted feelings and his urgings towards the dark side are still there, but they're more buried deep down. And he does joke around a lot more. He is doing these reckless things, and he's like, all right, I've got a plan. And everyone's like, well, what's your plan? It's like, I'm going to jump from here to there. And it's like, that's not really a plan. What about the rest of us? It's like, I'm going to do it. And it's like, sir, can you, okay, he's going, can someone get the jetpacks, because we got to follow him, because the mission objective's over there. Oh my, and where's Ahsoka? And Ahsoka's joining him. Okay, sure, just leave all of us clones on the other side of this ledge. Got it. It's like, that boils down, how that, it's landing at Point Range. It's like, next time, just tell me to jump. It's like, well, where's the fun in that, Rex? So you are seeing Anakin more at a more comfortable level and stuff a lot more often in Clone Wars, and showing how wise he is beyond his years, actually teaching Ahsoka. And he's not just this whiny emo crybaby. It's like there is a lot more warmth and humanity and charmingness to him. It's like he's kind of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo almost rolled into one, and he's a really, really fascinating character. And so, thinking about it, it's like, with those two very different takes, it almost seemed like Hayden Christensen and Matt Lanter's portrayals of Anakin Skywalker were very, very, very different. And it's like because because with a lot of the other actors, you get either very close voice matches for those characters, or they're new characters just for the show, or you actually, in some cases, manage to get actors from the movies back. To where I didn't think about this at first. I thought they were very different, but I recently saw a comparison between Clone Wars Bail Organa and live action Bail Organa, played by Phil LaMarr and Jimmy Spitz, respectively. Phil LaMarr actually does a really, really good Jimmy Smits. His voice is a little too deep, but the inflection is like spot on. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, I really did not think that this was like close at all. And it's actually really, really, really close. Again, his voice, it's like they could have pitched it up a little bit in post and it would have sounded probably, sounded like right on the money, but it's like, but then you lose a little bit of the performance doing that. So you have cases like that, but it's with all these other characters where they're trying to match the films as close as possible. But then Anakin, it almost felt like that they were just like, we're deliberately going a completely different direction here. And so like there was always this kind of disconnect, jumping from like, say, Attack of the Clones to watching Cat and Mouse, if you're watching in chronological order, the first chronological episode of Clone Wars. It's like, yeah, this doesn't really feel that much like Anakin Skywalker. So I really, really appreciate that Dave Filoni gave, and a little bit of Deborah Chow and in Kenobi as well, of where Dave Filoni was able to give Hayden a little bit of a chance here to be that Clone Wars Anakin that he never really got to be. Because he said in interviews, it's like, oh yeah, no, I would have loved to do Clone Wars. They just never called me. Which is kind of a bonkers thing to think of, because they got back certain people, but then it's like Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman. Yeah, I definitely see them not really wanting to do this animated kids show. But it's like, why didn't you reach out to Hayden Christensen? It's like maybe his big redemption or whatever could have come a long time ago. Anyway, it's like, but then we lose out on Matt Lanter, who's just so amazing as Anakin. So it is really cool. It's like when, Ahsoka falls through the fog or whatever, and she wakes up and she's her younger self. Shout out to that actress, by the way, playing younger Ahsoka. It's like she didn't really sound like Ashley Eckstein, but boy, did she really have those young Ahsoka mannerisms down to a T. It was perfect. And the clones are running, and Anakin's batting away blaster bolts, and Ahsoka goes, "This is the Clone Wars." And he's like, "Yeah, no kidding." It's like, and then it's like yelling forward and a lot of that, and then like when it's having the talk, it's like, hey, it's here, it's not your fault, don't blame yourself. The writing felt, I mean, because they weren't copying actual conversations that they had in the show, but you were getting the feel and the sense of conversations Anakin and Ahsoka had in like season 1 and 2, like during the battle for Ryloth, and then the second battle of Geonosis. I really felt like it was a mixture between the conversation they had where Ahsoka had just lost her V-19 squadron during the space battle above Ryloth, and taking that, hey, it's not your fault, it's her beating herself up, mixed in with their kind of more butting heads from Weapons Factory, where Anakin keeps interrupting Ahsoka when she's supposed to be the one doing the briefing, and they're kind of clashing a little bit in an older brother, younger sister type of way. All right, so I really liked that conversation because it felt very much like a mixture between those two emotional states, and what they were saying felt very reminiscent of those early seasons of Clone Wars, where it's like, are you joking right now? It's like, well, what would you prefer? It's like, would you prefer me to take this seriously? It's like, well, yes, I would actually. And it's like the back and forth there. It's like, that was the most I was, because again, I didn't, seeing Rex, I'm like, oh, cool, it's Rex. And it's like, I didn't jump out of my seat and go, woo, or whatever at that. I was really more impressed by how they were able to capture that feeling in the dialogue there. And not just, it's like, forget actually seeing them physically on screen in those costumes with the walkers in the background and the actual physical live action and not CG clone troopers. It's like, forget all that stuff. It was more the being able to replicate that feeling of early Clone Wars so well, and it tying into Ahsoka's character, because this is her older mind trapped in her younger body. Because it's through the world between worlds, because it's all Force stuff and it's weird. So that's more what I was really, really impressed by, going, this is amazing of that. And then the shot of him walking into battle, and there's the explosion, and he's drowned out for a second, and the light shows back up, and suddenly he's Vader, and then he's Anakin again. Really cool flash, because she's seeing that because it's in the back of her mind the entire time. That's like, yeah, no, this is my loving, a little unorthodox, but, very friendly, all things considered, master. that I loved as a kind of this older brother figure in my life and everything. And, we got on really well, and, he was my master and blah, 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 blah. But then in the back of her mind, it's like, oh yeah, but he's also Darth Vader and he killed children. And so that's freaky. So so the one thing that I will, because when they announced the show and there was rumors circulating, and again, they're still not really confirmed, but there was rumors circulating that they had actually started working on this show as an actual sequel to Rebels and it be animated. And they because I think there's reports out there that, some of the Rebels voice actors had been in the booth and recorded 3 or 4 episodes or something when they decided to shift gears. So whether or not that's true, again, it's going to be a long, long time before we figure that out, because I'm sure they've signed a bajillion NDAs and stuff. But when all that stuff was swirling, I was like, well, why does it need to be live action? I don't really understand what purpose this show being in live action could serve the story more than finishing up the Rebel story in animation, since that's where it started. Because by moving this story to live, because again, for me, I see it all. It doesn't really affect me one way or another. I'm still going to watch it. It's like I said earlier, Star Wars to me is Star Wars. It doesn't matter what medium it's in. But again, it's not always the case for everyone. Like, my mom has not seen any of the animated Star Wars stuff. So it's but Bo-Katan shows up in season 2 of Mando, and she's like, well, who's that? Well, I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh, cool, it's Bo-Katan. And it's like, well, who's that? And again, that's more me freaking out that the character is back, less so that she's in live action. I'm just going to preface that. So it's like, well, who's that? Well, she's been in Clone Wars and Rebels. So it's like, so we know her. She's an established character. And it's like, so, and there's a lot of people out there that are like that. That it's like, well, who's this person? Oh, it's from one of the animated shows, K. And they won't really investigate any farther. And that's really kind of annoying. It's like maybe you should investigate further, because there's millions of people that love these animated shows, and some of them think that, this is some of the best Star Wars that's out there. This is some of the most Star Wars ever Star Wars. And it's better than, a handful of the movies and stuff. It really adds a lot to this entire thing. So if you like Star Wars, you kind of owe it to yourself to experience this. And so you're just going to leave people more confused because I've seen a lot of comments online going, oh yeah, I've never seen Clone Wars or Rebels, but this is good. And it's like, well, are you considering watching those shows now? No. It's like, it's really annoying. It's like, go back and watch the animated shows. So it's like, but of course, this show being animated wouldn't necessarily reach a broader audience. So I understand from a marketing point of view, and it's like with all the other stuff you've been doing on Disney Plus, it's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense to put in live action from let's get as many eyeballs on this as possible front. But in terms of actually serving the story, I wasn't quite sure what moving this to live action would actually accomplish. It's like, well, if you want to do Rebels Season 5, as this, and do an Ahsoka show and have it be Rebel Season 5 and have it be this kind of spin-off like Bad Batch is, then just do it in animation. Finish it up that way. But all that being said, this is the first time I'm like, okay, moving Ahsoka into live action was the right call, because it really very well, if with these Force Vision flashbacks, was really able to very well establish just how young Ahsoka is. Because they state in ancillary media, like the novelization of the Clone Wars movie, that she's 14 at the beginning of the war, and the war lasts 3 years, so she's 17 when it ends. It's like she's 17 during Order 66. How traumatic is that? So it's like, so yeah, she's young. Everyone knows she's young. But her being an animated character and her being voiced by a woman in her 30s and whatever, and raising the octave of her, it's still a cartoon, a very, very good cartoon, but it's still a cartoon, where it's like there is this suspension of disbelief that is that we're still, we're not 100% accepting of all the things. So, and we're not getting it completely. So seeing that, however old girl that's playing young Ahsoka here is, and seeing her standing next to Hayden Christensen and having clone troopers running around and stuff, it's like, dang, she's young. And again, that's a fact we've all understood before. but actually seeing it there in live action, and then Anakin going full Vader, and it's like we'll start from the beginning, and the red lightsaber, and then the swish swish, and they're fighting each other, and then he grabs her arm and like twists her hand like he does to Obi-Wan or Revenge of the Sith. It's like so, and doing and stuff like that, and the yellow eyes, and it's like yeah, that's scary. So so this is the first time I'm like, okay, yes, it was a smart choice to move this show into live action, because would it have still been impactful if that was in animation? Yeah. But it hits a little harder because we actually get to more easily guess the age, or not guess, but understand the age she was at that point in time. So that was really cool. That they did that. I think that was done really, really well. So, and so I mean it's like a 50-minute long episode almost, but it's like there's not actually a whole lot of story in here. I mean, this is more Ahsoka's transition from Ahsoka the Grey to Ahsoka the White to invoke Lord of the Rings, which Filoni likes to do from time to time. So this is the explanation for where her white costume came from at the end of Rebels. And it's like, and maybe she's gonna get a staff. Who knows? I guess we'll find out. So, So yeah, very cool, flying off of the Purrgil, the music, so great. I love the little chopper moments of him playing with Jason, and then like they're on the comm, and it's like Chopper says you need to get low. Well, how low, Jason? It's like Mom wants to know how low. It's like he says as low as you can get. It's like just small little things like that are so great, and I smile. It's like Captain Carson Teva being there, really enjoy that. And like him wanting to know what the heck is going on, and then Huang says that, oh yeah, Jason has abilities because his dad was a Jedi. He's like, all right, we're doing Jedi stuff. I'll just shut up and say yes. Let's go do this thing then. It's like I really like that about this guy. He knows when he's kind of in over his head, and so he just accepts things and he gets going. That's fun. So and then yeah, they fly off with the Purrgil to another galaxy. With very Anakin Skywalker moment too. Where it's like I feel like the dynamic between Huang and Ahsoka is almost like Obi-Wan and Anakin during the Clone Wars. Like, Anakin, do they know where we're going? No. It's like, well, then how do you know we'll get where we're going? It's like, well, it's better, and it's better to be somewhere than like still being stuck here, or whatever that line is. Like, that was very Anakin Skywalker. That was really cool. Let's see here. And yeah, okay. I will. So one of two things before, because I really don't have that much else to say. I think this was the selling point, the final moment where it's like, okay, I'm finally on board with Rosario Ahsoka. And it is because it's like, okay, so the kind of more stoic, she's not completely acting like, we would expect. So she is more this subdued version of Ahsoka. And then at the end of the episode, she's all smiles and, is kind of being cocky again. It's like, okay, so it was part of the character arc. Understanding that now, so it's like Dave Filoni likes to play the long game. I think we all know that. So I think so now I'm starting to get on board. It's like, okay, so it's like, so now she's gonna be probably acting more like a wiser, grown up Ahsoka, but she's gonna probably feel a little bit more at home with what we're more familiar with in Clone Wars, and even the like season 1 and 2, or 2 and 3 of Rebels. When she's in it a lot. No, she wasn't in the third season. It was really 2 and 4. She was in more than anything else, and because she was in like the last episode of season 1. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. So I'm on board with Rosario Ahsoka. She's been doing a good job, and I've never thought she's done a bad job. She's like, yeah, she doesn't really feel like the character, and that was purposeful. So it's part of her arc. It's like, gotcha. So yeah, I think she's doing a good job, and I finally am starting to think, okay, that's Ahsoka and not that's Rosario Dawson. So I knew I would probably come to accept it. It would just take a little while, because before these 4 episodes of her own show, she's only appeared as Ahsoka in live action 2 other times. So yeah, it took a bit, but I'm finally on board. So that's good. And then the one other thing I want to say, I kind of mentioned it a second ago, but actual live action clone troopers that aren't CG, I think that's really, really cool. Specifically, Phase 1 clone troopers. We've had Phase 2 clone troopers in Mando and Book of Boba Fett already, but for us to now have Phase 1 clone troopers in live action, I think is really, really cool. And I don't know how many people notice this, but there's a slight design change to the Phase 1 clone troopers now that they're actual costumes in live action. Is the helmets are a little bit wider than they were in Attack of the Clones, because if you notice in Attack of the Clones, they're very thin and they don't have a very, a very large opening. It's like it looked very, very tight around the neck. Where here it was a little more wider at the brim, which is a lot closer to what they looked like in the Clone Wars, so animated show. So I like that they took that design from Clone Wars and made it a little wider, probably because when they were making these actual costumes, they realized, oh wait, the stunt people don't really have a great way to fit their heads into these. It's a little difficult. And it's like we could print these out in 2 pieces and have it be like a snap-on thing. Like I'm pretty sure some people in the 501st do it that way. And we could do it that way, but that'd probably be more expensive to print these helmets in 2 pieces. Or we could make it one big piece and just make the bottom of it a little wider so they could stick their heads in. And I think that's probably, if I had to guess, that's probably what they went with. I'm going to be very interested in the Disney Gallery, the making of Ahsoka episode that I'm sure will come out for this. So they can discuss some of those things. I'm sure they'll go into depth about that. Or maybe not in depth, but I'm sure they'll touch on it. It's like, yeah, so we actually have Phase 1 clone troopers running around. Then they'll have like the props team or something talking about that. It's like, well, we took the CG model from ILM and we made some tweaks to it, and then we printed it out and we gave it to our stuntmen and blah 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 blah. So yeah, I really think that's all I have to say about this episode, because of course, the big thing was, this kind of big progression in Ahsoka's character arc, and just kind of the stuff that they were doing with live action Clone Wars, which was cool, but I'm not going to be freaking out about it like some people. So, but overall, yeah, really good episode. I'm eager to see where the rest of the season goes, since we're halfway through. So yeah, so that will be it for this review. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are, of course, in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.